So this is the first video in a series I'm doing for the Adapt Academy. The Adapt Academy is a free online academy for you to go learn everything you need to know about running a business as a contractor. It's absolutely free. You don't have to sign up, give me your email or anything. Just go to the link in the description and learn what you need to learn to be more successful in life and business. Today's topic, we're talking about revenue, gross profit, and net profit. These are like the nuts and bolts of your business. If you don't understand this stuff, then you're gonna waste a lot of time, you're gonna lose money, you're gonna have a really bad time with your business. And a lot of us, myself included, operated businesses for years before we truly understand what these words meant. Lucky for me, I grew up selling Pokemon cards on the playground, so I naturally had this like dead set focus on profit. Maybe it's because I'm Armenian, my whole family, like we're just very money focused, but a lot of people don't have that. And so the best way to go about this is to really understand how this stuff works. And let's start with revenue. So revenue is like everyone's favorite topic. It seems like I go to a lot of like workshops, seminars, entrepreneur meetups, and people like to throw out big numbers talking about revenue. And they even like to make it sound like it's the money they're making. Like, oh, I made 10 million last year. And they really mean that their business brought in $10 million. But that doesn't necessarily mean they kept any money at the end of the year. And so when people like to throw out big profit or big revenue numbers, I just kind of disregard it. I want to know the rest of the information. A good example of this, I was at a workshop last year and I was in a conference room with 11 other business owners, businesses of all different shapes and sizes. And we had all spent tens of thousands of dollars to be in this room, learning from these people who were there to help us grow our business. On my left side was a guy doing $10 million a year. On my right was a guy doing $1 million a year. Now, if that's all you knew, like which business would you want? Like, maybe you'd want the $10 million one. That's 10 times bigger. But by the end of the day, I had figured out that the $10 million guy was keeping $600,000 a year, and the $1 million guy was keeping $600,000 a year. So at the end of the year, they both made the same amount of money. That was the money they actually got to keep. And the guy that was doing $1 million, he was working a few days a week. He was trying to decide which surfboard to buy. Meanwhile, the guy who was doing 10 million, like all his hair was gray. He was really stressed out. He was slamming coffee. He was having a really tough time. He needed a lot of help to figure out what to do because he was managing dozens of people, lots of projects, lots of money was going through his business, but not a lot was being kept at the end of the year. So this is why if you're listening to someone talk about revenue or you're thinking about your own business, like revenue is just one lever that you have, but understanding what your gross profit and net profit, those are super, super important for you to understand what the other levers are that you can adjust to make your business better. So there's like, I guess I'd say 3 types of camps out there. So one of them is Tom Reber, Contractor Fight. You know that guy. He's very prominent in the space. He's a big time business coach for contractors. And his whole philosophy is that you take a job cost and you double it. So times 2. And that would result in having a 50% gross profit. And he leaves it at that. He's like, don't worry about anything else. Just take whatever the job's gonna cost, multiply it by 2, and you're gonna be good. And if you're one of those types of people who like, you can take advice, like someone tells you to do something, you don't think about it much, you just go and do it, that might be a great first step for you. I've never been one of those people. Like I want to understand like what's actually going on here. And the thing is you miss out a lot of nuance. You might end up like overpricing or pricing yourself out of the market, or it's one blanket rule. The reason he likes to say that is because he's a coach. It's like it's a really nice hook. It fits on a t-shirt. Like he can hammer that into your head 1,000 times. And so it's a really good fit for the coaching space. Then there's another camp, that's the profit first camp. So you've heard of them. Profit first is like this concept where as soon as money comes into your business, you immediately disperse it to a bunch of different bank accounts. And so I've been doing this for a couple years. And so when money comes in, it goes into an income account. And then from there, it goes to, what are the different accounts? So we've got operating expenses. We've got owner compensation, which is like my paycheck. We've got profit, which is whatever's left over after those. And then we've got taxes, which is the estimated tax burden at the end of the year. And so somebody sold me on this a couple years ago. His name's Matt Beans. There's a video of him on my channel. You can go back and watch it if you want. So I've been doing this for a couple years, and I found that all it did was add a bunch of extra admin for me to do every month. I don't really get a ton of benefit out of it because I already understand my revenue, gross profit, net profit, and I'm not, the money's not burning a hole in my pocket, so I'm not going and spending a bunch of money I don't have. But if you find yourself in that situation where somebody puts a deposit down on a job and you're thinking of all the things that you can go buy for yourself and you're spending all that money and then you're struggling to cover the job, maybe profit first would be a good thing for you to try. That's one situation where I think it's pretty helpful. Another one is if you're a business that you have other people managing your money, you're not the one moving it around, then it might be very helpful to just be able to log into a bank and see all these different bank accounts and get an idea of where you're at. And you move these around based off a percentage. So if you find that you're constantly running out of money or to do the jobs, you could put more percentage into operating expenses and so on. So those are the two camps. You can kind of see they're a little bit opposite. One's like, there's just one blanket approach. The other one is like, take more of like an accounting approach. You can pick your poison. So there's the third camp, which I guess I would just call the truck camp. This is kind of how I think about it. And I think about revenue, gross, and net as like, what are the levers I have with my business? Like if I want to make more money out of my business, what can I do? And let's just go through an example to think through it for a second. So let's say that my revenue is $100,000. This could be one job, it could be a remodel project, or this could be all my jobs added up for the whole year. And $100,000 comes into my business, and my cost to actually do the job between labor and materials is 60 grand. So I subtract the 60,000 from the 100,000. I'm left with my gross. That's what my gross profit would be. I'm left with 40 grand, $40,000. And a lot of people think because they hear something like, oh, just double your price and your profit is 50%. But that is just your gross profit. It doesn't count your overhead. Now, overhead, that's like an accounting term. Where does it come from? It comes from literally having to keep a roof over your head. And so overhead in a business sense are all of the things that you have to pay just to stay in business. That's your licensing, your insurance, your truck payment, office stuff, telephones, all the things that you can't attribute to any specific job. That's your overhead. And a lot of times we don't know what our overhead's going to be for the year until the year's over. And so I typically look to the end of the year when I'm paying taxes to truly figure out what my overhead was and what my net profit was. So you've got your revenue, you do the jobs cost money, you're left with your gross. And then throughout the year, you have to pay all the truck payments and the insurance and the licensing and all that, your overhead, and you're left with your net. And so your net profit, that's what you get to keep. That's what you pay taxes on. That is the most important number in this whole thing. Because if you go through all the trouble of knowing what these numbers are and this number isn't big enough, or maybe it's even negative, then you did all of this for nothing. So hopefully you at least learned from it. And so I talked about the levers. There's 3 levers here. So the first one is revenue. Revenue is like sales. It's pricing. You can charge more. This is the lever that Adapt Digital Solutions helps people with. We do marketing, we get leads, we get sales, we help people sell more projects. We help them get more opportunities so that they feel comfortable charging more, and we make this number go up. And with more jobs comes more job cost. That's just the nature of it. But the job cost is the second lever. You know, there are things you can do to cut down on job costs. You can get better deals with vendors. You can do some of the work yourself. You could find cheaper labor. Getting the job cost smaller is another thing you can work on to make the gross go bigger. And then the third thing is your overhead. So all of your expenses that aren't related to jobs. This always makes me think of, like, we've all seen like the new contractor. He's been in business for 6 months and he's driving like a gigantic $150,000 truck down the road. And that is eating all of his overhead. You know, a lot of those guys are getting to the end of the year and finding they're not making a lot of money because they've got a truck payment that's eating up a lot of their net profit. But those are the three levers you have. And so if you look at it that way, it's like, okay, if I can get my revenue bigger, that helps. That's going to help get the net bigger. Maybe not on its own, but you're moving in the right direction. And then if you can make the job cost smaller, everything after that stays bigger. And if you could reduce your overhead, at least that net grows. And you can just keep moving your way up. And you know, if you need to, like, re-watch this part of the video a couple times. Like, once you understand these 5 things here, then you don't need all of these like cheat codes or silver bullets or whatever. Like, you don't need all these guys if you just understand this stuff here. So I'll end it with a quick story just from my own experience. So a few years ago, I hired my first sales guy. It was an experiment. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. Hired a sales guy. We made more sales and we made more money that year. I was like, heck yeah. So then the next year I hired a second salesperson and we made even more sales. We managed to raise our revenue and number of jobs, number of customers by 40%. And with more jobs and more customers, job costs grew a bit, but our gross grew a little bit too. And then our overhead went up a little because, well, the job cost went up because I'm paying commissions to these salespeople. We add to the black bar here, the revenue bar, but then I added to the job cost because I had to pay commission on that job that was sold. And then when we get to overhead, I was paying salaries. And so I was adding to my costs here too. And so here I was having a great year, 40% growth, everything was looking awesome. And then I went time to pay taxes. And I found out that I made about the same amount of money that I did the year before. And so I went through all of this work, managing two extra people, dealing with a lot more headaches that came with all of these new customers and all of that, only to find that at the end of the day, I actually didn't make any more money. So it took me a year to realize all that stuff I was doing wasn't really worth it to me. I would have rather had 40% less work to do and been able to make the same amount. And so if you can relate to that, if that's a situation you've been in or you don't want to be in, understanding these numbers is really the first step to being able to solve that. And in the years since, I've managed to get the revenue number bigger, change the commission structure so that it works more over the long term. And now I have one salesperson. And so everything kind of worked itself out, and I use these numbers to guide it. So hopefully that is helpful for you. There's an accompanying article to this video, so you can find the link in the description, go to the Adapt Academy, read about it, watch the video. I'm going to be putting up a whole bunch of free articles, free videos on there to help you learn everything you need to know about the business, be more successful, and thanks for watching.